overall, when it comes to the ranking, Scott said 3 or 4. Realistically, that's fine by me. I'm not just going to push for number 1 because I think it's so. I would be more than happy to drop it down out of number 1 so that this channel may maintain some credibility, because people would just fucking murder us.
You're like, gold man with gold gun.
Because of me. But all the same, I do think it's worthy of finally breaking our Connery triad of Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger. I think it would sit pretty at 3 with the scope of this movie. Even with its shortcomings, I can see it surpassing Dr. No. Like Dr. No, every time we're like, it's just so perfect, and it's, and it's like, it didn't aim that high. So therefore it like had the room to just be like relatively perfect in terms of like what it was going for and to be that excellent prototype. But like this movie breaks past it with even just on like the Scaramanga relationship alone. And yes, it has some Hamiltonian goofy stuff in there, like all of his movies do. But for me, this movie cracks past Dr. No's being small. The scope surpasses Dr. No for me.
I disagree. I would put it at 4.
I think it does come down to what Char was kind of saying with weighting, where he might not put much or any weight on the Bond girl, where McCurdy, you might put more than he would, in different aspects of all these different James Bond tropes. So for myself, I do find the Bond Scaramanga dichotomy like the most interesting of all the movies we've seen so far. But Goodnight does bother me too. So
to me, this movie has always felt like Scaramanga and Bond are cool, and then the rest of the movie is shit. Like that's how the movie feels to me. And that's why I'm like, I don't rank it as high as you guys, because I'm like, it's got a really cool, it's kind of like the opposite of Thunderball, right? Because Thunderball, we were like, there's got a like really great cinematography. It's got this kind of somewhat really good relationship with Domino, but Largo's sucks like a lot.
Yeah.
And you got other things that are really good about the movie, but like the villain sucks. And then this movie to me is the opposite. The villain's really great. The performance is really great. And sometimes I'm thinking like, I think you guys just really like Christopher Lee. But to me, I'm like, the rest of the movie
no doubt.
is kind of atrocious. And I'm like, that's how I'm seeing it. And I'm like, I just don't think it's 3. I will live with 4. Like, I will live with the film that I'm like, no, this one's like one of the best films that they've ever made. I'll live with it above that movie.
Okay, so like, at this point, we're really trying to figure out like okay, like our Untouchable 2, Goldfinger, and From Russia with Love. Like those, those continue to be our dudes.
I'm good at 3 also myself. Sounds like maybe Scott, you're 1 down. McCurdy's a couple more down.
Again, no. Again, I am 3 or 4, but
didn't we not talk about like a long time ago? It was like what makes a good movie versus what makes a good James Bond movie. And to me, this movie is not a James Bond movie. In the plethora of all the other films, it just really doesn't add up to a James Bond movie for me.
But again,
what is a James Bond movie? He has to drive around in an Aston Martin. I mean, that's
where I
differ.
He had to drive in an Aston Martin, but like
that's where I differ.
Aston Martin, gadgets,
better gadgets.
Better girls.
Better girls. And as we talked about, there is no, like, we don't have a definitive like requirement. Like we never once said like the rules are it has to be more Bond than not. We just said that like that's kind of that was what our discussion for From Russia with Love versus Goldfinger came down to, was like, well, what's better to be like, because you guys would be like, oh, but it's so Bond, and it's like, what does that mean? Well, it means he's like driving in a cool car and he just got the babe,
With Dr. No, they had a movie with a budget of $1 million. They made a really smart spy thriller.
Yeah.
With some decent action, a great character, some stuff that we're like, oh yeah, this like you guys who never seen Dr. No, we were actually kind of into, and we're like, oh, this is actually a pretty cool movie. I didn't even know about this.
Yep.
Versus a movie that's like gag after gag after gag, and with bad sound effects, and it's like you were trying, and you made a silly movie versus you made a good spy movie for $1 million.
I don't see gag after gag after gag.
I'm not talking exterior gags. I'm talking Bond. Roger Moore brought a very serious Bond. Slapping bitches, punching bitches, getting ready to shoot Asian guys in the dick.
McCurdy says 4. Nathan says 3. I say 3.
Get f***ed.
What do you say, Scott?
Suck my...
Because you can't go 3.5.
McCurdy. That's what I say, Charlie.
Here we waited 3 weeks to get Scott in, and he comes in with... This movie is unique. Like, if you just like again, objectively speaking, this is unique amongst all that we have so far.
Yes,
it's and again, the reason I lay out that it's unique is because Bond is immediately let go from MI6 to handle some personal business. That personal business is that he's been threatened by the top assassin on the planet. The story itself comes down to your reputation versus mine. Bond's reputation, as set up by all these adventures we've seen him go on so far, they come to a head where now it's like the Avengers, where it's like strength invites challenge, right? When they're like, why are all these bad guys popping up? It's like, well, because the Avengers rose up, so that strength invites challenge. Bond is like number one dude, and somebody inevitably pops up and is like, I want to be number one dude, so I'm going to kill that motherfucker, and I'm going to take I'm going to become world champion. This movie isn't just Scaramanga's on an island and he's going to use the Solex to blow up all of China or whatever, and Bond's got to go in there and save it. That stuff can be fun, but at this point, we've had movie after movie after movie of that. Now, suddenly, it's personal. It is a personal story for Bond, and not the personal in the sense that he's going to go get married and fall in love and all that shit. It's personal so far as Bond's reputation within the shadow world of spies and assassins versus another guy's reputation within the shadow world of spies and assassins, and how those two champions are going to meet and go head to head, mano a mano. That's what the movie means to me. That's where I put it above Dr. No, but below Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. Goofy shit aside, I was the first to be like, yeah, it's got some missteps and some goofy shit, but that unique quality is what stands out to me. Plus, yes, Chris Lee is awesome. Scaramanga is a lot of fun. I wish there was a ton more Scaramanga, but like too much would maybe not be a good thing, right? Like because that would kill his like that paranoia that he kind of creates in the beginning, where it's like he could be anywhere, and then he pops up out of nowhere to do you think he's going to shoot Bond above the bottoms up or whatever. That's what does it for me. I mean, I've said this whole time that like usually the bad guy is going to drive my decisions, and I think this bad guy is wonderfully unique. And then I just have a boner for the Golden Gun. I mean, who wouldn't? It's like the coolest fucking thing ever, and he just pulls it up out of nowhere, So that's what does it for me. And then Dr. No is like a good prototype, but like now we're reaching more modern Bond movies that might begin to surpass it, in the same sense that like take any other franchise and it's like over time, people cling to the old stuff. Like, no, only the old stuff is good and the new stuff is garbage. It's like, well, after a while, they just make better movies. It's like comparing like old Batman to new, and some people, oh no, 90s Batman is for me. It's like
you have a point where at some point, as far as what is acceptable for an audience, what can an audience take starts to change. I mean, there's a lot more to that discussion just besides, equipment got better, but it was also things that you couldn't do in the 60s. What you could show, what you could see became much more accessible with rating systems and other things that they were able to get away with things like making a much darker Bond, which we'll see down the road.
And then the reverse of that is Star Wars, where it's like, well, now we have the technology to do what we couldn't before, but then
exactly.
But then the story suffers because the focus is on technology. So it cuts both ways.
So okay, Scott, where you land? Because I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Sounded like he was saying 3.
I would hate for it to come down to a vote, but like,
so
as it stands, I'm at 3, Nancy's at 3, McCurdy's at 4. So you either tie this and we go on, and McCurdy loses sleep. Nans, why 3?
I hate to just say I agree with everything you said about Dr. No, but it really is like you said, it's like Dr. No is a solid prototype, but it's the first one, and it's James Bond has evolved since that first movie and incorporated other tropes or different. We don't want to use the certain words to explain James Bond, but it really went to another level, and Dr. No is just like not quite there, but still a really solid movie. From Russia with Love on the other bookend, I suppose, is just another sort of different class, much more serious film that we all enjoy. So I think The Man with the Golden Gun fits fairly well between those two films.
Okay.
I'm like, you guys are fucking nuts.
Just like,
you are so fucking far nuts. Like, I'm like, Charlie, I want you to go out of the street and tell people this opinion and have like a little table that says "changed my mind," because that's how nuts you are. That's how insane I think you are. Like I'm like,
none of the movies are perfect. They all have their flaws and they all have their strong suits. Mm-hmm. I remember for the Goldfinger episode, while I agreed that it was near the top, I didn't love that that Bond was like in captivity for a good portion of it. I mean, I could nitpick any of these movies, but so in the nitpicks, I certainly agree with McCurdy. Like, Goodnight's not great, Hip's not great, the slide whistle is horrible. J.W. Pepper, I know McCurdy, that's actually one that you kind of like, but if you fix all these nitpicks about within Man with the Golden Gun, I could see it being near the top, because the core of it, the Scaramanga versus Bond, I think is the best of all the movies.
That's what it comes down to for me. Like I'm so willing to forgive stuff because of that.
That's what we're arguing. You either prefer Scaramanga versus Bond and relation to those two, and that simple dynamic of man versus man, only one can survive.
Yeah.
Or we prefer the simple perfection of Dr. No.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
That's what separates the two, if we're going to find anything.
Yeah, those are hard to put on to put it on an even keel would be like, well, okay, the relationship of Bond versus Scaramanga or Bond versus Dr. No. I mean, if you line those up, undoubtedly it's Scaramanga.
Yeah.
Like, undoubtedly. Yeah. Dr. No is just again, it didn't reach that far, and that's what it comes down to for me, is that the relationship between Bond and Scaramanga pushes it above the simplicity, the simple perfection of Dr. No. I completely agree with McCurdy that there are all these little things that, like, I mean, Bond doesn't have to be serious all the time. I prefer, I mean, you dangle Daniel Craig in front of me and I'm going to go, that's what I want. That's what I want. But back in the day, they made movies differently. This movie as a self-contained movie, without comparing it to anything to come, they have these little fun moments that I legitimately laugh when Bond says, "I sure am, boy."
You're not thinking that. I sure am, boy.
And like, should Bond be saying that? Well, I don't know. It makes sense in the moment, and it legitimately makes me laugh.
Bond had a lot of brilliant quips in this movie.
I know he has a date at the Bottoms Up Club tonight.
How will I recognize it?
He's not like other people. He has 3.
Fascinating anatomical tidbit, but probably the most useless piece of information I ever heard. Unless, of course, the Bottoms Up is a strip club, and Scaramanga is performing there.
Bond is clever in this movie, whereas in Live and Let Die, Bond is just speaking in these awkward and vague puns that are groan-worthy. Whereas in this, he's a little wittier, and I just appreciate that he's a f***ing asshole to everybody he comes across. Like I think that's where I feel him as being Bond. But then he has funny, goofy stuff like "I Sure Am, Boy," but it's all part of a package. Now, again, if somebody could jump into the past and put Casino Royale in the projector, I think everybody would be like, "What the f*** is this?" But like, we are in that time, as we've talked about time and again, where it's like they are putting in all these things that they're gonna try to please an audience and bring an audience into a franchise that may have been dying at the time. So it's like, let's put our Bruce Lee moment in there. Let's put in let's add in all these elements that will make it a little more universal rather than specific. Like, some people might watch Casino Royale and be like, I don't like, it's so dark and depressing. I don't like it. And then they watch Roger Moore and they're like, I mean, there are plenty of people who prefer Roger Moore movies. It's a cup of tea argument, right? What we're trying to do is determine whether or not this particular movie managed to transcend the first movie ever made that was held back by being the first movie ever made.
This movie has a lot of goofy stuff. It's chock full of goofy.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. No doesn't have as much goofiness into it. It tries to play it straight throughout the entire movie. Yeah, you have the 3 blind mice gag in the beginning of the film, but like, I'm willing to buy it because it's at least a clever way of, you're having 3 assassins kill a guy in the beginning of the movie. And yeah, there's the tank or whatever, the dragon. And I know Charlie's going to harp on it, like, yeah, it has that goofy stuff, but it has this really good relationship with Scaramanga. I feel like you're weighting that so much more that it's like, that's what makes the movie so great. And I'm like, I don't think it makes the movie amazingly great. I really don't. And also, if I'm to be perfectly honest, I don't think all of that is there. I think you're kind of seeing things that aren't quite there to an extent where I'm like, give me more, and then maybe I would 100% agree with you. But like, it's kind of maybe subtly hinted at, and that's where I'm like, I think Dr. No is still a better movie. I mean, we've argued this 1,000 times. It's perfect and it's simplicity.
Sorry, Scaramanga was from the beginning. Dr. No had almost no involvement besides a name that entire movie, besides 10 minutes.
Okay, you're arguing apples and oranges there, bud. You're arguing
Dr. No had 10 minutes at an end of a movie, and sure, there was dynamic there over dinner.
Is Bond discovering what is going on in Jamaica?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Scaramanga is not in, or if Dr. No is not in the whole movie.
Yeah.
He has to figure out who Dr. No is.
But I kind of personally,
Scaramanga, on the other hand, it doesn't matter. Like, that does not matter to me.
McCurdy, granted, though, you have said numerous times that you prefer a more active bad guy. We've reached a point where it's going to come down to personal preference. Like, it's just going to be.
Yeah.
Do you have an overall feeling of 3 or 4? And for me, it's 3. For Nans, it's 3. For McCurdy, it's 4. You're saying 3?
And if I was being completely honest with myself, it'd be less than 3. Like, but I'm at this point now where it's like everyone's arguing it's going to be this, and I'm like, fine, let's just make it that, because I can't keep going on and living this life where, we're trying to figure out where this movie lies, and I'm like sitting here, I'm like, you guys are all effing nuts, and I have to be on a podcast with you where I explain the Spawn movies. I just can't do it.
Podcast.
Okay. Can we just?
It's a lie.
Scott, can you?
Honestly, all right, fine.
If you want to live with guys, if you want to live with all the hate comments, you can.
McCurdy, hold on. It's 3 purely because Scaramanga is a better bad guy than Dr. No.
He has more hands.
That's it.
He's got.
He does
better guns.
He does have better guns.
More nipples.
He has more guns.
He's got more nipples than anybody.
He is. It's from
nipples.
beginning to end. I love the dynamic of a bad guy versus a good guy. And that is...
Scott, I really love movies with bad guys with 3 nipples. It's the best thing in the world.
They are, again, they are equal but opposites.
For 3 nipples.
That's what's fun about these guys.
An extra fucking nipple to lick.
These guys are Batman and Joker. These guys are equal but opposites. Bond could have just as easily turned into Scaramanga. Scaramanga could easily have been taken in by MI6. Again, Scaramanga is obsessed with money, where Bond is obsessed with country and loyal to country. And that interplay is what does it for me. That's where I think this movie is just, again, objectively unique within the collection of Bond movies. It's unique. Yeah. And yeah, it makes some missteps, but I overlook them because of that uniqueness and Scaramanga himself.
This movie isn't one that I'm like, oh, I love this movie. It's my favorite. It's towards the bottom of the list. It's not just me, Charlie. It's a lot of people. I don't
give a about what anybody outside of this podcast cares.
I'm not going to yell anymore. I do not care if you don't think that. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not the only one. You can convince these guys, but I'm not convinced. You are part of a crowd that loves Secret Service. You can convince these guys, but I'm not convinced.
As one of the outside guys, I've heard that both your beloved of Her Majesty's Secret Service and this movie both have alternate fucking freaky fans that love it or hate it.
It's weird. Polarizing.
So suck my
I'm not going to do that.
I like this movie.
But what I am going to do...
And I backed you in the last one.
What I am going to do is I'm just going to say,
don't tell me, Charlie convinced me.
Let's put a smile on our face.
I like this movie.
That's great. I like them too. I like all the movies.
We came to a conclusion.
We ended this thing. I'm done.
Okay.
That's the best part about this.
Okay, Scott. That's great.
McCurdy, to your point, outside of the 4 of us, there's going to be people who think we're nuts. That's what groupthink is. That's where everybody thinks that Citizen Kane is the greatest movie ever made. And yeah, it's great, but like it's been surpassed. Sorry. Oh, it's been fucking surpassed at this point. So
Avatar.
Yeah, like even Avatar might be better.
Avatar.
No. Anyway, but
Avatar 2.
Regardless, we came to our conclusion. We're putting it at number 3. Goldfinger at number 1. From Russia with Love, number 2. The Man with the Golden Gun, number 3. Dr. No at number 4. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, number 5. Number 6, Thunderball. Number 7, Live and Let Die. Number 8, Diamonds Are Forever. Number 9, You Only Live Twice. There we go. Any of you that disagree with Man with the Golden Gun, you think it sucks, go ahead and suck McCurdy's in the comments and you know what?
Oh, don't do
McCurdy,
that.
set
Don't
up
do
a
that.
Patreon.
Don't
set
do
up
that.
a Patreon.
Don't do that.
Send
Don't
money
do that.
that's going to go to McCurdy if you love the Man with the Golden Gun or if you hate the Man with the Golden Gun.
Anyway,
don't do that.
Own Patreon.
But have some class. Have some class like some of these other movies on this list.
Oh, no, dude, get paid while you can, McCurdy. Get paid while you can. You've got guys who love On Her Majesty's Secret Service and they hate Golden Gun. Get paid, and then you can buy a Golden Gun.
T-shirts.
Our Russian friend will surely
I'm going to end this.